This is an awesome specimen here of, what is that? Can you guess it? Agave americana cultivar nova. It's the bluish giant agave. Most agaves have these spines on the edges of their leaves. Not all of them, but most of them. One really neat thing, look at the patterning on the leaves from when the leaves were all rolled up and kind of pressed against each other in the center where they come out, they leave those patterns on them. Really pretty. So this needs a big spot. And this is a big spot here in front of a neighbor's house. You can see little pups coming up on the side too. Those can be broken off and replanted in other places. But it's not for everywhere in a landscape, because as you can see, they're very sharp pointed leaves, but in the right spot, it can be really nice. When you buy your huge estate ranch in San Ynez, you can line the driveway with it. Just as a side note, it looks pretty similar to the tequila agave, but that's Agave tequiliana, a different species. But the center part, kind of the heart of this agave, well, not this one, the tequiliana, is roasted and fermented to make the tequila drink. There you go. This is Agave attenuata, the velvet agave. Kind of a low growing, 2 to 3 feet tall, really nice compact clumping agave. You see these little pups come out on the sides as it ages, so it can form a nice big clump if you like. There is a particular cultivar called Nova that's very blue. This is not that. This, as you can tell, this kind of has a greener tinge to it. The blue one's really pretty and even more popular. But this is agave that does not have spines on the edges of its leaves. A lot of agaves do, like the tequila agave you might think of. Those really large ones, and we have that in our unit also. But this is one that's very, very common, also called the foxtail agave, common around Southern California and southwestern United States. Really nicely used in landscaping for various kind of, forms and elements in a landscape, lining a pathway perhaps, along a driveway, mixed in with sages and other things. It's very drought tolerant, very easy to propagate, requires almost no care, and when it puts up its very tall, long inflorescence, it's like kind of like a century plant. It's about 8 feet tall, and it sticks straight up, and then it kind of hangs over, looking kind of like the tail of a fox with a lot of flowers on it, making it look somewhat fuzzy. So that's Agave attenuata. It's getting a little dark here, but I thought I'd try to capture this one last one for the night at least. This is Canto Phoenix cunninghamiana. Canto Phoenix cunninghamiana. It is the king palm and has the pinnate fronds, and this one's a tall one, but if we zoom in there we can see that it has what we call the crown shaft, that smooth green part, which is the petioles. Bases of the fronds come down a couple of feet and wrap around what is the trunk, so you have this green top. Doesn't look so green right now, it looks kind of brown, but it's a smooth top portion of the trunk. That's the crown shaft. The only palm in this unit that has the crown shaft, and that would be the king palm. Here is a nice row of king palms, Canto Phoenix cunninghamiana. Say that 3 times fast. I wanted to show it to you. It's a little bit better picture than the other one I have. You can see the smooth crown shaft at the top and the inflorescence down below with all those little pink flowers. It has a smooth trunk, single trunked. They all have the crown shaft at the top. Those are the king palms. That's the thing that will distinguish it from others in this unit, is that smooth crown shaft, which is actually the base of the petiole of the actual frond. Here's another smooth-barked palm. Again, a single-trunked palm planted in a cluster of 3. That's often done in landscaping just to kind of give a fuller look. But let's look at the very top here. Hopefully you can see that the very top of the trunk is green. There's like a green, smooth section at the top. That is called the crown shaft. And what it's made of is really the base of the petioles of each of those fronds. Kind of comes down and wraps around the trunk smoothly and cylindrically. This is the king palm. So the king palm is the only palm in our unit that has that crown shaft. So if you're looking at a palm and you see that kind of palm-like trunk, grayish brown with those horizontal ring-like lines where the leaves used to be connected, and you look up at the top and it's different at the top. It's not brown like that, it's green. I think I'm just showing you a silhouette because I'm looking towards the sun. But that above that kind of clumpy cluster there of red fruits and things, that is the crown shaft. Back up a little. See if I can see that any better. So those are the king palms. Very beautiful. I'm here back at City College, looking into the succulent and desert section of the Lifescape Garden. And we are here to look at Oldham's giant bamboo. So that's that big thing in the background. So this one is one of the biggest bamboos that you'll see around here, Bambusa Oldhamii. That should be the giveaway for it. If you see it in a picture, got some kind of point of reference. And also, if you look at the bottom parts of the stems, these are big. There's my hand, so they're, you know, about 3 to 4 inches diameter when they get really large and older. It's a clumping bamboo, so it's not one that's going to run off and send runners across the driveway and far to the neighbor's yard. It stays as a clump. It will just expand where you water it. So if you water it on the edges, it'll keep expanding a little. But about 30 feet tall. This one's kept moderately watered, which is good because it stays nice and green. And we've got a little pathway through it. Kind of feels like you might see a tiger jump out, or maybe a panda. Leaflets are small and simple. And every now and then it will bloom and send out these inflorescences, which are these really tall stalks. Go way up high. I don't see any right now, but that's the Oldham's giant bamboo. So you've got the green stems. They do turn yellow golden as they get older. You can see the tops right in there. It's yellowish. And this is the only tall one. You see this occasionally throughout town, and it's used as a hedge between like the apartment building, something that's maybe 1 or 2 stories. It wants a big, nice, soft look on the outside of it. Bambusa Oldhamii. Here at Chase Palm Park, there's a nice line of Brahea armata, and that is the Mexican blue fan palm. It's all foggy today, so the lighting is just not that good for you to see the color. This is one we're looking at right here, but I want to take you over to this smaller one here. So this is a small one. You can see the bluish color. It's just more whitish blue looking, you know, not really blue, but like the sky blue, but it's kind of a grayish blue compared to like the Mexican fan palm or this ground cover. So a neat look. You can see this one here. The distinctive thing about this one is its color, fan shaped. It's the only palm we've got in our unit that's got a palmate leaf, and it's bluish. And when it flowers, these are the flowering stalks. See that thing sticking out to the right? Kind of hard for you to tell, I think, in this picture, but this big thing that's hanging down out of it that's not a leaf, those are the flowering stalks, the inflorescences. They protrude way outside of the leaf canopy. They hang about 2 to 3 times longer than the leaves themselves. That is unique to this palm. I mean, there are other palms that do it, but in our unit and most palms, their inflorescences, the flowering stalks that produce the flowers and the fruit, do not go past, they're not longer than the leaves themselves. So, this is the Mexican blue fan palm. Well, even closer, you can really see how it's bluish rather than greenish. You see the green background of the ground cover. They're pretty, and they have a, just because of the color, they give a nice distinct contrast color in any kind of design. Here at Chase Palm Park, there's a nice line of Brahea armata, and that is the Mexican blue fan palm. It's all foggy today, so the lighting is just not that good for you to see the color. This is one we're looking at right here, but I want to take you over this smaller one here. So this is a small one. You can see the bluish color. It's just more whitish blue looking, not really blue, but like the sky blue, but it's kind of a grayish blue compared to like the Mexican fan palm or this ground cover. So a neat look. You can see this one here. The distinctive thing about this one is its color, fan shapes. It's the only palm we've got in our unit that's got a palmate leaf, and it's bluish. And when it flowers, these are the flowering stalks. See that thing sticking out to the right? Kind of hard for you to tell, I think, in this picture, but this big thing that's hanging down out of it that's not a leaf, those are the flowering stalks, the inflorescences. They protrude way outside of the leaf canopy. They hang about 2 to 3 times longer than the leaves themselves. That is unique to this palm. I mean, there are other palms that do it, but in our unit and most palms, their inflorescences, the flowering stalks that produce the flowers and the fruit, do not go past, they're not longer than the leaves themselves. So, this is the Mexican blue fan palm. Well, even closer, you can really see how it's bluish rather than greenish. You see the green background of the ground cover. They're pretty, and they have a, just because of the color, they give a nice distinct contrast color in any kind of design. If you looked at the Sable Palmetto or Sable Palm with this one, which is the Guadalupe fan palm, a lot of similarities. It has the base, the trunk is not smooth, the petiole bases are still there, although they're more in a kind of basket interwoven pattern. And this one has much bigger leaves, fronds, much wider stem of the petioles. You can see that petiole in the background. They're just going up to these leaves that are called costa palmate. They have a fold through the middle. There's a mid vein to that leaf that follows up from the petiole. Let's start at the base. Follow that big thick thing, and it goes into the actual blade, and it's a mid-rib that goes all the way through. So it's a big old fold, and this leaf is about 6-7 feet in diameter. If you look at the Sable Palm, you'd say, oh, it's kind of similar. Well, 2 differences are no arms on this one. The Guadalupe fan palm does not have any spines on the edges of the petiole. This is Brahea edulis, and these fronds are much larger, and the tips don't hang down very much. It doesn't have that look. Kind of tucked in here, so a little bit hard to see, but this is Brahea edulis. Guadalupe fan palm, indigenous to Guadalupe Island, which is off the coast of Baja California, and then become popularized in the horticulture industry. This is the Pindo palm. Behind the dark red iracine plant is the Pindo palm, Butea capitata, and it is a palm, and it has a grayish green leaves. This one is medium height. They do not grow very fast. One thing about this palm is it has persistent petioles. So these of all the old frond stalks have been cut off, but they are still there. They don't fall off, or even if they were pulled off, they do not get smooth. The trunk, that is. Let's compare it really quickly to right over here. You're in the tropical section of the Lifescape Garden, and you've got a queen palm trunk. Very different. Self-pruning, very smooth. It's back over here to the Pindo palm. The Pindo palm produces tons of little fruits that are, it's also called a jelly palm, because these fruits, the little yellow ones, let's look at this one here. These are edible and they're good. It produces lots of them with very little care. This plant doesn't use a lot of water, almost none. Produces a nice tree, nice canopy, palm look if you like that, and produces food too. So, and it also can serve a kind of a design form of having this bluish tint to it, which some people like, just as a contrast to a lot of green. So there it is, Butea capitata. And if for somehow you're getting entranced by this dark red plant, it's called Iresine, I-R-E-S-I-N-E. It's a tropical, uses a lot of water. It's really pretty. This is Canna Generalis. And you see the X in the name if you're looking at the name on a list, or if you're seeing the title of this video separately. It means that it's a hybrid. It's a Canna species. It was crossed with something else, with Generalis in the name, and that's what the X means. So these Canna species are highly hybridized by humans to produce all different kinds of flower colors and leaf colors, some heights too. They're widely used in horticulture throughout the world. It's a tropical plant, big, flat, oval-shaped green leaves, and they kind of look like banana leaves, and various types of flowers. These ones are smallish, kind of salmon colored. There's all different colors that you can get. This is just one, the Canna Generalis. Back at City College at the Student Services building on the east side, and we see Shamrops Humilis, the Mediterranean fan palm. It's a clumping palm, so it does produce lots of new shoots out of its base. This has been trained up. This has been trained to have just 5 very clean, smooth trunks up to the tops where all the fronds are, small palmate leaves. If they, groundskeepers wanted to let this keep growing, you can see all the little baby ones coming up. You could get a lot more in here. This could be a lot fuller if you want it to be. There's another clump down there. Some people use these as a screen. They'll let it all just grow up naturally, and it'll just be a big thicket of palm fronds. The Mediterranean fan palm. These are pretty old. I'd say 70 years old, possibly. The trunk isn't completely smooth, but it has very small petiole bases left on it. And it gives a nice clean look. Each frond itself is about 18 inches wide, so not too big. And it doesn't get much bigger than what you're seeing here. This is about as big as it gets. And this one over here, a little bit younger, shorter, thicker. So you can't see through it quite as well because the fronds are lower. It is armed, you can see in there. A nice kind of close-up of the yellowish flowers, the younger orange fruits, and the dark fruits that are purple, and the armed petioles. Shamrops Humilis. Still at City College, in front of the white tent. This is Cordelia Astralis. So cordyline, it looks kind of similar. It's the purplish plant in the background there. It looks similar to the Formium, except it's trunk forming. So you get this spray of leaves at the top of the trunk. This is purplish color, really pretty, and almost kind of like some Dr. Seuss-like tree. But some people, I've seen these planted where people think it's a Formium and it's going to stay low with no trunk, and it gets taller and does this. They do branch. They can be interesting looking. Lots of different colors you can get them in. And these are newer cultivars. The older cultivars that you've seen around, cordyline, that are just green with thinner leaves, have been planted for a few decades around southwestern United States. It's Cordelia Astralis. Actually, while we're here too, I'll just give you a quick look at. We have deer grass is one of the plants we've looked at in this class. This is another Muhlenbergia, but it's called Muhlenbergia pink flamingo, and the flower stalks are these large kind of feathery inflorescences that are sticking out that are pinkish colored. So it's a little different looking than the deer grass. That's just an added on bonus. First thing we see here in the open space is just a big clump of eucalyptus. And over there you can see some baby date palms that are basically weedy. They just pop up wherever the birds drop the seeds. But the eucalyptus, we've had a couple on our list, but these are not part of Unit 5. Most of these eucalyptus were brought to the area. Elwood Cooper. The Elwood Preserve is named after the first name of the old nurseryman that lived here in the Goleta area early in the late 1800s and brought these eucalyptus, mostly the blue gum, to the area to plant. He saw a landscape here in California that was unforested and dry, and he thought, well, eucalyptus don't need a lot of water, and they could reforest this area and provide timber. Well, the timber didn't work because the wood, when put in water, they were thinking of using these the timber from the eucalyptus for pilings on piers, like the Goleta Pier, etc. But when put in water and when it dries out, the wood twists, so it's not really good for anything except maybe burning and habitat. And now they're just considered kind of an invasive plant, taking over little gullies and valleys and waterways. They are habitat for monarchs. They're not native. They do provide some nice shade, like right here, but often are changing away from native habitat. Native plants can't grow where these are growing. So let's keep walking down the trail and look for some Unit 5 plants. Good morning. I'm taking a little walk today from my house to go see what kind of plants we can find around here that are in our Unit 5. Right now, I'm at the Foothill Open Space, and this is an old landfill that was operated until 1967, and it has been restored. I don't know if restored is the right word. A lot of native plants have been planted back on top of the old landfill. They put soil on top when it was done, and they put plants on top of that. So it's a nice walking place. It's not perfectly pristine habitat, but it's not too bad, and it is open and semi-natural. So let's go see what kind of plants we can find there. Here is the trunk of Howea forsteriana, the Kentia palm. Not a great shot of the above ground leaves, but a good shot of the trunk. It's green and has those leaf scars that are horizontal. It's very indicative and characteristic of the Kentia. The fronds themselves are long. They're 8-10 feet long, pinnate, flat, and they are said to look the most like a coconut palm of any palm that'll grow in our area. Coconut palms will not grow here. And the way they sound in the wind is the most like a coconut palm. So if you're really trying to make it look tropical, this would be the palm to grow. They're quite expensive. They grow about a foot a year, and they're worth about $100 a foot on the horticulture market. Here's one as we go up. Kind of looks like a coconut palm. There's some fruits up there. And then the canopy Kentia palm. These are easy to propagate, so if you have somewhere that you wanted to start them off, by the time you're 20 years older, you'll have quite a crop to sell off and make some money. I'm here standing in front of the original entrance of Lotus Land on busy Cold Spring Road here in Montecito. And this is one of the few places that I see these palms around. The Chilean wine palm, or Jubea chilensis. They might look a little bit like the Canary Island date palm. They're similar size, but actually the fronds are even bigger. although these are much less common and they're slower growing. And as you remember from, if you've already seen the video for the Canary Island date palm, its trunk is not smooth like this. These fronds fall off completely, leaving a smooth trunk on their own. The Canary Island date palm, they have to be chainsawed or sawed off, and they leave kind of a diamond-shaped stub on those palms. Anyhow, this Ganawalska's lotus land, a beautiful, beautiful private garden here in Montecito. This was the original entrance to the property. Now groups and tours come through on the sides. It's down the street. But she planted these probably, it's about 90 years ago. So these things are just about a century old, these two palms. Giant. If you didn't see the top, it kind of looks like an elephant's leg, you know, coming down. Really smooth and beautiful. Native to Chile and other areas around that. You can see how the trunk diameter really changes here. That's really only an indication of the amount of water that tree got during that period of time when it was growing. So here, let's go a little closer here. You can see how it kind of starts out fat, gets a little skinny, goes kind of in and out of constrictions and expansion in the size of the trunk, and that is solely because it went through a drought period. The ones that are inside the garden, there's quite a few more that got consistent water for the last 100 years. They are all giant and kind of, they don't really get skinnier and bigger. They're just big all the way. These are a very rare plant now. They were harvested for the sap, which is very sugary and made into a alcoholic drink by some of the indigenous people and settlers in Chile in that area, but now that's prohibited because to do that you have to take the entire tree down. And but they're a gorgeous old stately tree meant for big areas, big buildings. Not very common, but really interesting, and a piece of history here in Santa Barbara. Chilean wine palm, Jubea chilensis. I'm here standing in front of the original entrance of Lotus Land on busy Cold Spring Road here in Montecito. And this is one of the few places that I see these palms around. The Chilean wine palm, or Jubea chilensis. They might look a little bit like the Canary Island date palm. They're similar size, but actually the fronds are even bigger. Although these are much less common and they're slower growing. And as you remember from, if you've already seen the video for the Canary Island date palm, its trunk is not smooth like this. These fronds fall off completely, leaving a smooth trunk on their own. The Canary Island date palm, they have to be chainsawed or sawed off, and they leave kind of a diamond-shaped stub on those palms. Anyhow, this Ganawalska's lotus land, a beautiful, beautiful private garden here in Montecito. This was the original entrance to the property. Now groups and tours come through on the sides. It's down the street. But she planted these probably, it's about 90 years ago. So these things are just about a century old, these two palms. Giant. If you didn't see the top, it kind of looks like an elephant's leg, you know, coming down. Really smooth and beautiful. Native to Chile and other areas around that. You can see how the trunk diameter really changes here. That's really only an indication of the amount of water that tree got during that period of time when it was growing. So here, let's go a little closer here. You can see how it kind of starts out fat, gets a little skinny, goes kind of in and out of constrictions and expansion in the size of the trunk, and that is solely because it went through a drought period. The ones that are inside the garden, there's quite a few more that got consistent water for the last 100 years. They are all giant and kind of, they don't really get skinnier and bigger. They're just big all the way. These are a very rare plant now. They were harvested for the sap, which is very sugary and made into a alcoholic drink by some of the indigenous people and settlers in Chile in that area, but now that's prohibited because to do that you have to take the entire tree down. And but they're a gorgeous old stately tree meant for big areas, big buildings. Not very common, but really interesting and a piece of history here in Santa Barbara. Chilean wine palm, Jubea chilensis. Here's an example of the Lemus condensatis canyon prince. So this is a shorter version of the big island rye grass, island Lemus grass, 2 to 3 feet tall, bluish color, really pretty ornamental grass. This was a wild hybrid, thought to be a hybrid, found in Prince Canyon off of one of the Channel Islands and used as a border here. Instead of the really big one that we saw before, you can see a little bit more, they'll get mixed in here, that bluish color. And if we contrast that real quick with the larger island ryegrass, see I'm here on campus, but let's walk over this way. Back to that nice, beautiful ocean view from City College. They say that's a big draw for why students come here. I say it's the teachers, but you know. Here it is. So here's the Lemus condensatis. Very dry looking, but much taller, not bluish, bigger, wilder, just kind of scragglier. Very different than the Canyon Prince. This is Lemus condensatis. This big grass, island Lemus grass, or island rye grass. Got pretty nice foliage here at the bottom, kind of a nice regular pattern to the way the leaves come off, the 2 to 3 foot tall stems. This one is very dry and not getting any water except precipitation from the sky, so it's, you know, it's looking a little scraggly, but this is where they're used. This is an old landfill that they've restored here. The flowering stalks are pretty cool though. You can see them here shooting up 4 or 5 feet higher than the plant. So the whole thing is, you know, 8 to 10 feet tall. These are used not commonly like in yards, but in bigger areas. If you've got a big slope that you want to do erosion control, this is a great plant, has deep roots to hold in the soil. Any big areas or kind of background areas. We have some of these in the garden on campus, and if you give them regular water, what you see here is kind of a scraggly, partly green, partly brown bottom to the plant becomes a very thick, bushy, green mass. And they get very large, and every year or two we cut them all the way to the ground and they come back. This is Lemus condensatis, island Lemus grass. A very nice specimen of the Muhlenbergia rigens, or deer grass. This is a great California native up to a little higher elevations, sierras. You'd see these under pines, a little bit under the oaks, but more in the higher elevations. But it does really well down here on the coast too, and grasses are great. This deer grass has been used widely in commercial landscaping. You see a lot of it around the university here in town. A little bit, actually started in the horticulture garden, but we got a lot of it planted on campus at Santa Barbara City College too. But a really pretty, kind of nice rounded, spreading grass. The inflorescences of these long, dark stalks that stick out, used for basketry by many different California native peoples still. And every year you can, well, it used to be that they were burned to the ground, but now you can just mow them down to the ground. They come back nice and full again. So deer grass, Muhlenbergia rigens. Here we have bananas. The Musa acuminata dwarf Cavendish cultivar. These are these short, 6 to 8 feet tall bananas that have these large oval leaves. You know what bananas look like, but there's a really nice kind of silhouette of a leaf. Beautiful green color, they're pretty. Of course, they're tropical, so they give a tropical look to a garden. They send out all these little pups that come up. So these are, clumps are formed of the actual banana plants. not truly trees. The trunks are just made up of the bases of the petioles of all of these. Let's go around this other tree to take another look at it. Big, beautiful leaves. Easy to grow. Take a lot of water though. And here's one that has flowered and produced a fruiting stalk. So there's the baby bananas on it. Those are the female parts there that form the bananas, the ovaries, and at the very tip of that flowering stalk is the male portion where the pollen is produced. And that comes out and pollinates the bananas, and then they form. They get so heavy that they fall over. You have to prop them up, and students sometimes take the bananas. Here you go, Musa acuminata dwarf Cavendish. Here's a nice specimen of the Mexican weeping bamboo, Otatea acuminata subspecies aztecorum. A bit shady here, but at least there's not a lot of shadows, but big, long shoots that come out from this clumping bamboo, and lots of small, fine leaflets hanging downward. Gives it this weeping form. See, this big shoot just kind of comes out from the base, hangs down. The leaflets are small, thin, almost look like grass. And the whole clump itself kind of has a big arching, weeping form. There's another one over here. They produce a nice, really thick screen that looks very soft and weeping-like. Not super tidy, but if you want some big thing to create a screen like we do here that screens out the parking lot from the people in the garden, this is a good one for you. One interesting thing too about these all bamboos is that they usually flower about once every 90 years. And when that species flowers, all the other individuals of that species throughout the world flower. They flower all at the same time, and then they all die. So either seeds have to be kept to maintain that species, and sometimes root cuttings work too. It's an interesting thing that they all kind of have a genetic clock, all that same species. So just for fun, I'm going to show you a few plants on the way to the one we're actually looking at. This is Pride of Madeira, and it has big, spiky purple blooms that attract tons of bees. It's not in our unit. This one actually is. It's the pygmy date palm, very little. Of course, you should know this one, foxtail agave or velvet agave, not blooming. Oh, we've got a jade plant, a really sad looking jade plant. Some aloes, birthday balloon, lantana. So what I want to show you is this, Pennisetum macrostachyium. So this is the purple fountain grass, or red fountain grass. There sometimes goes by both names. And actually this is a really pretty specimen. You can just see it kind of gently blowing in the wind. The younger inflorescences of this grass are purple. The older ones turn kind of that tan light color. A nice round shape. This type of grass would be cut back all the way to the ground every few years and then come back to kind of this nice big shape. And you know, these were really popular about 10 years ago, and they're still fairly popular, but not as much as they used to be. People are going for other types of grasses that are not quite so bold in color. But this is a great specimen. It looks really pretty against their wall. And they've got this nice kind of terracotta colored wall with these inflorescences. There's hundreds of flowers in there. A nice addition to any kind of driveway, something like this. The form softens hard edges of buildings and paths. So that's the red fountain grass. Car's gonna hit me, I better move over. Ah! This is Phoenix canariensis, the Canary Island date palm, native to the Canary Islands, and then popularized and put into the landscape industry decades ago, and is grown all over the southwestern United States. Even when I lived for a little while in San Francisco, after the earthquake there in 89, it was 88 or 89, they had a big earthquake, and they took down the freeway that used to run along the waterfront, and they kind of revitalized the waterfront. And the mayor at that time was friends with the mayor of LA and said, I want palm trees lining the waterfront and the wharfs and the piers in San Francisco. And they put in these Canary Island date palms because they're resistant to cold and heat, and they don't take a lot of water, and they're big and stately. And someone somewhere in the design world thinks that if you put palm trees, it'll draw tourists, even if you're in San Francisco. Now, I would have voted for something else in the San Francisco area, maybe like Monterey cypress or something that's more about Northern California, wetter, cooler, foggier. But anyways, they put these in. This is a big one in the Foothill Open Space Preserve. It's kind of it's kind of wild out here. It's not getting a lot of water. It probably was dropped here by a bird about 25 years ago. Big, thick trunk, about 3 to 4 feet in diameter. Often the fronds don't fall off on their own. These have all been cut off kind of willy-nilly here at the bottom. They're laying on the ground, but often they're cut off with a chainsaw and they leave this almost diamond-shaped petiole scar or cut. You can see at the top there, and kind of an interesting pattern. Each of the fronds or pinnate leaves is about 10 to 12 feet long. These are used often for big, open, stately types of designs, municipal buildings, entrance to a very large home. They're planted, I'd say, very modestly now, but in the last 50 years, quite heavily, so you see them around a lot. All palms, well, not all, but a lot of palms like regular water. This one is more drought tolerant than others. The Canary Islands aren't. They do have a fair amount of water, but it comes seasonally. So this one out here is just on its own. The one thing that you're not seeing here that's very characteristic of this palm for our unit, it's the only one that has large inflorescences that come out. They don't come out past the tips of the fronds, but they're pretty much bright orange. So you're not seeing them here, but you will see them in other pictures. If it's got bright orange kind of thing, which is the inflorescence, inside there kind of tucked in a little bit, then you know it's the Canary Island date palm, Phoenix canariensis. I'm here on Cabrillo Avenue looking out at the pier on West Beach, and I wanted to show you this little site here, not too far from a couple of hotels and the bathhouse, but this line of Canary Island date palms. It looks like these are the entrance to something, these giant, over 100 years old palms, just about 100. Yeah, probably 110. So these palms are left here marking the site of the old Potter Hotel, built in 1903, burned to the ground in 1921. And these were the palms lining the entrance. Canary Island date palm, the Phoenix canariensis. So kind of a neat spot. I'm glad they kept it. Now it just is a line of open grass to an apartment complex. Here is the Phoenix Reclinata. So you're looking at a big clump. It's really one individual tree. It's a palm tree with long pinnate fronds, and it has many sprouts. So this is one clump. This is one of the only clumping palms with the pinnate leaves that we'll see. And all these are different ages. So you've got some that are really tall, that were the first sprouts, and you've got some younger ones that are coming up, you know, even inside this ground cover. 2 or 3 feet tall ones, smaller, medium size, and bigger.
You sound like me. That's what I
And
do.
I am looking at the oldest ones. They all have bright green foliage, unlike some of the other ones like the Canary Island palm, or like we just saw the wine palm in a different video, which have a little bit darker green foliage. These are bright green and clumping. So this clump has been here for a long, long time, and I think often the landscapers prune away the small ones, keep just a few growing, but you can also let it get really bushy. And this is grown in a planter, so it doesn't really show you why they're called the species name, but when they're grown kind of in a bigger open area, the larger ones start to On the outside edge of the clump, kind of lean downward or recline. So that's Phoenix Reclinata, Senegal date palm. This one's here in the upper village in Montecito. Okay, what you're looking at here is Phoenix Robelenii, pygmy date palm. These are palms that are single trunked, and they're often planted in clusters. So there's 3 individual palm trees planted here together. It's not a clumping palm that grows a bunch out of the base. It's just, they're usually just by themselves. So this is 3, actually there's 4 planted right together, but they're single trunked. So this is a short, these are actually pretty big, a very short palm, and a really nice one. It kind of can go in a tropical setting looking somewhat like a fern, but they're medium amounts of water. They stay small. They're not going to get much bigger than this. So good kind of for understory, or like this is kind of along a path planting, is the Phoenix Robelenii, or the pygmy date palm. You see the the pinnate leaves, and each one is about 3 or 4 feet long. The whole tree is about, let's see, give you a little bit of scale. There's some house, and so the whole tree is probably about 8 feet tall. I've seen these grown in the understory of other larger trees, or alone like this. They take full sun. They're nice, kind of, you know, designers would like them because they're kind of a nice tidy little palm. They don't get too big, they don't get, their shape doesn't change, and they stay pretty much in the same form for their whole life. There you go. This little video is just to show you some other types of Formiums. I showed you one on campus. There are, like I said, lots of different colors, sizes of Formiums. Here's some low-growing yellow, white, and green ones that kind of look like a spider plant. There's some more colorful ones behind it, darker purple and taller. Some even darker purple ones over here. So there's all different kinds of Formiums that can be used for different design purposes in a landscape. This is an example of Formium tenax, New Zealand flax. It's called New Zealand flax because these Formiums are native to New Zealand and other places, but that's one of the places they're native to, and they have really thick, strong fibers in them, so they can be used to make cordage or twine or even cloth. Here in North America, they're used just as landscape plants. These are some of the popular ones from probably about 20 years ago, but there's all kinds of different sizes or heights and colors of these Formiums now, used extensively in landscaping. The red ones, the variegated red and yellow, orange, purple, lots of really interesting colors, and they're just a nice grassy kind of shape to them. You can see they're just used as accents below. Giant star pine here, right in front of the urgent care, so if I fall I can go in there and get help. So that's Formium tenax. This will be a little bit harder to see, but this is Philostachys nigra, the black bamboo. It's not a big stand of it. So here you've got some sweet potato vine, but actual bamboo are these tall linear shoots. And if we get real close, you can see the black stems that are what give it its name. Is this stand, if we give it more water consistently and gave it another 10 years, we would have a lot of these very dark stems. It'd be really beautiful. They get to about 2 to 3 inches in diameter, the stems, when they're really old. You have a whole bunch of them. You just got this forest of black canes or bamboo stems with a lot of green leaves on it. It is a runner, so it will send out running roots underground and maybe cross the path and come up on the other side. Wherever it can find water is this black bamboo's mode of operation. Let's go back in there once more to look at these dark black stems. This Philostachys nigra. Make sure you check out some other pictures of these online because they are truly beautiful. This palm is the lady palm I want to show you. It used to be a large clump back here, but it has been most of it has been removed, but this little one right here is growing back from this clump lady palm. So one of the ways that you can recognize this is it's very small and delicate palm. It grows in the understory of other trees. It likes full shade. It's a great indoor plant. Often you've seen it for 100 years in hotels like Victorian homes and hotels and things. Still, as a potted plant in a hotel lobby, etc. It has this fibrous bark or trunk, and it has small, highly divided leaves. It's about as big as my hand. They get bigger than this. Of course, it's a clumping one, and it will form, a lot of new shoots will come up. You can see there's 2 or 3 there, and form a nice thick clump. These are often easy to fabricate. I've seen these as plastic plants a lot. They look pretty good, but they're still plastic. This is the remaining clump we have on campus, and it will come back if this gets adequate water. So Rapis excelsa lady palm. Here's a bonus picture for you. This is Castor Bean plant, one of the top 10 most invasive plants in the West, especially California. Some nurseries actually sell them because they are pretty. You've got the really interesting red stems and in the green foliage, kind of the spiky fruits. So they're pretty. And if you're, born like I was in the 1960s, you would have heard like your parents talk about your grandparents would give my parents castor bean oil to like if they had stomach issues. It basically cleans you out, makes everything come out. But these pop up everywhere. They're all over campus, and we pull them out as soon as we can. So this is castor bean. And also a lot of people are allergic to the actual just touching the leaves or branches. They get dermatitis, some kind of skin irritation, so be careful if you're around it. I mean, you can look at it and enjoy its beauty, but if you want to actually rip it out because you don't like it as a weed, then get some gloves on. And you already got a mask probably, so that'll help. Palm, this Sable Palmetto or Sable Palm. This one I like it because it is native to the United States, to South Carolina. It's the state tree. It is not self-pruning. As you can see, the petiole bases are left there. The bottom is a little bit smooth. That's where I pulled those petiole bases off to expose the smooth trunk. But this one grows right on the shoreline around the South Carolina, Georgia. All that long petioles, fairly long, that lime green color, huge palmate leaves with the tips of those fronds hanging down. You can see how the fronds are relatively flat. They're all pleated, but then the tips of those leaflets, not even leaflets, but those divisions of the leaf are all hanging downward. Gives a really nice look. The Sable Palmetto. Those petioles that you're seeing in there are armed. They do have spines on them. Another popular sage that is not on our list is the Salvia waverly. That is this one you're looking at here with the purple sepals and pinkish white flowers. This one, it's a really nice sage, very popular, produces flowers often. You can cut it back, it'll, a couple times a year, and it'll grow back again, producing this big spray of flowers, attracting bees, and just kind of a delicate look too. Some sages have a harder, kind of more scrubby look, and this one is not. Like my mother-in-law has it in her garden, and she won't have anything in her garden unless it looks like Monet, like light and feathery, and so that has a place in a landscape, that type of form and look, and this would fulfill that. Salvia waverly. I might as well mention this one right next to it. If you don't know this one already, Mexican sage is super popular for at least 35 years now. Overused by now, but really pretty. I mean, again, you can cut this one back to the ground almost 4 times a year and it'll come back and look like this a couple months later. Really hardy, really drought tolerant, lots of beautiful flowers. So you can't really, you know, blame people for planting this, but it is used heavily. Easy to propagate. You could rip it up, pull apart some pieces and shove them back in the ground and they would grow. So this one is all purple. The sepals and the flowers are purple. There's ones with the flowers are white, the sepals are purple, the opposite. There's even pinkish ones of the Mexican sage, Salvia leucantha, but just another salvia, not on our list, but good to know. Here's still at Chase Palm Park and looking at just another example of the blue chalk sticks, or Senecio repens. This is in our unit 4, and very nice bluish color. But what I'm showing you here is the flowering stalk. So these things are in full bloom here at Chase Palm Park. And you can see they're in the sunflower family. They've got these divided flowering stalks that stick up. This is not why people plant them. They basically look worse with the flowers there. The flowers don't get prettier than this. They kind of just look a little bit rattier. So people often just cut these off and keep the nice succulent bluish leaves there and try to get rid of the flowers. Here is a nice specimen of Strelitzia reginae, or the bird of paradise. It's one of the few shrubs we have in this unit, but it's got nice, long, wide, almost arrow-shaped leaves. Not really quite, but pretty monocot type of plant, meaning that all the veins are parallel inside the leaves themselves. It has a few other characteristics true to the monocots, but related to banana. It kind of looks like a short, squatty banana, big, wide green leaves. It's a tropical plant, as you might have guessed. But flowers are why people have this. Very beautiful flowers. And it's supposed to look like bird of paradise, meaning that this here is like a hummingbird with its beak going down into the flower. And inside here, if you actually open this up, there are 5 to 7 of these orange and purple flowers that keep coming out over time. They get old too, and you have to cut them off, but this one only has a few blooms on it. I can see some blooming stalks coming up, these spiky things. But really neat, has a nice kind of, let's see, almost a purplish hue to some of the green leaves too, so which matches that part of the flower. So Strelitzia reginae. It's been in the horticulture industry for 50 years, very popular, still popular. A great tropical plant that actually doesn't require a ton of water to look fairly good. This is a cluster, it looks like 3, of the queen palm, Syagris Roman Sophiana. Sounds like an Italian dish. This one has a smooth trunk. They're single trunked, each of these. They're just planted in a cluster. Unlike some of the palms, which are actually clusters of trunks, they're more like a shrub. But each of these palm trees has these fronds, and the unique thing about this one, the queen palm, are the fronds are pinnately compound, but each of the pinna is what you technically call them, or those little leaflets on each of the fronds, or those little things coming out, they stick out at all these different angles off of the central axis of the frond, so it ends up looking kind of feathery, almost like a feather boa. So it's very soft and feathery looking, and it has that graceful appearance. If we can get closer, hopefully you can see that the trunk, it is self-pruning, meaning when the fronds get old, they fall off on their own. They leave a very smooth trunk, not like the Mexican fan palm where you've got those petioles kind of stuck to the side, give kind of a basket-like look. These are completely smooth trunks, just like you might see like in a coconut palm. It gently swaying in the wind, really pretty look. They grow fast, they're easy to transplant. Even large ones have a very small root ball and they can be transplanted quite easily. Dug up, very commonly used in like municipal or commercial building landscaping. They can just dig these up and replant them in front of a mall or wherever and have kind of instant landscaping. Another video of the queen palm, Sciagrus romans-sophiana. And this is one that I can get close to the trunk, so I'm just showing you how smooth the trunk is. All those horizontal lines you're looking at are where the old fronds were attached, so they're called the leaf scars. There's also some nails stuck into it. Yeah, it has a really, really nice, smooth bark, gives it a clean look, very pretty. This is Trachycarpus fortunii, or the windmill palm. I know it's kind of hidden by part of the deck here, but it is a single-trunked palm, and it has the same type of palmate leaves as like the Mexican fan palm and other fan palms we've looked at. One thing to distinguish this by is it doesn't get too big. This one's probably about 15 feet tall. They don't get a lot bigger than this. Not like the Mexican fan palm. They can get, 50, 60, 90 feet tall. This one is not like that. But let's look closer. I'm going to walk up the steps here and look closer at the trunk, because this is one thing that distinguishes this one from all the others. Look at how fibrous the trunk is. So you've got the petiole bases there, and then all this fibrous material that's surrounding and protecting it. And that stays that way, so it stays very fuzzy looking and fibrous. These are planted, a lot of them are planted in the middle of the Highway 101 through downtown. They do require water. They're more moderate to kind of a tropical plant, so they do need some water. And when we had our drought, when was the drought? Well, we're still in a drought now in 2020, but it started around 2014, 15. We were really talking about it a lot more. They stopped watering the middle of the median there in 101, and a lot of these died. Some of them are coming back, but they look a lot better when they've got water. And we're still at my house, so I'm really being a super lazy teacher and just videotaping plants around my house, but we happen to have a couple of palms that are in our unit. And this one, also kind of like the Mexican fan palm, it has a lot of nice green fronds that form a loose canopy, almost spherical canopy of fronds. And when we moved here a year ago, no one had been watering it for a year because the house was empty, and it only had fronds that kind of stuck up, and now it has some that hang down, so it's getting a little fuller looking. But each of those fronds is much smaller than the Mexican fan palm. I don't have a lot of good size reference to give you, but these are about a third the size of the bigger fan palms. But they are nice, and they don't grow too fast. They're expensive, so they're worth more money. This is another one that I put on Craigslist, and no one wanted it, so it's still growing here. It's kind of sticks in the middle of our view of the mountains. It's kind of in the way, but again, it's grown to like it, that it has a nice sound of the rustling fronds in the wind. And once I started watering it, it looked a lot better. So that is the windmill palm, Trachycarpus fortunii. I'm here at the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden, and I spied these two palms here. These are examples of Washingtonia foliifera, the California fan palm. Now, if you've watched the little video clip, I never know which order these are going to be put in, but Washingtonia robusta is the Mexican fan palm. How to distinguish these two? Because these are the two palms that are fan palms that are really tall in our area. You hardly ever see these. The California fan palm is not very common, and they are native. They grow wild only as far west as Riverside. But if you compare the two, the Mexican fan palm has a trunk width or diameter about half the size of this, only about a foot in diameter, much thinner than this. These are about 2 feet in diameter. And if you were look at the very top of the Mexican fan palm, it has a lot of fronds, at least twice as many fronds as this. A whole kind of round globe of green on the top. This just has one sticking out at the top. Now, if you see these California fan palms in their native habitat, they look better than this. These aren't growing that well because they're in this cooler coastal climate, and they don't get a lot of green fronds, and as they don't last long and they die quickly. But it still doesn't have as many. It's not as robust as Washingtonia robusta. So this is the California fan palm, and I can't get any closer because this area has been cordoned off for some reason. But there you go.
It's been pressed.
Okay, this is the California fan palm. You've seen the video of it already, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of dimensions, a relative size. You can see how wide the trunk is, 2 or 3 feet wide. Very different than the palms that line a Cabrillo Street, the Washingtonia robusta. Mexican fan palm trunk is only about this wide at the widest. So this is much thicker. These don't grow native wild here. Like I said, the furthest west they come is Riverside, and then they go east from there in the desert. This is California fan palm. Looks like it's been burned, and I'm almost wondering if they did that on purpose, because burning these can help invigorate the soil and diminish pests. Emmy, is it still focused on me? Is my head cut off? Well, here we're still at the botanical garden, so come here if you can and enjoy the California fan palms. I'm here at the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden, and I spied these two palms here. These are examples of Washingtonia foliifera, the California fan palm. Now, if you've watched the little video clip, I never know which order these are going to be put in, but Washingtonia robusta is the Mexican fan palm. How to distinguish these two? Because these are the two palms that are fan palms that are really tall in our area. You hardly ever see these. The California fan palm is not very common, and they are native. They grow wild only as far west as Riverside. But if you compare the two, the Mexican fan palm has a trunk width or diameter about half the size of this, only about a foot in diameter, much thinner than this. These are about 2 feet in diameter. And if you were look at the very top of the Mexican fan palm, it has a lot of fronds, at least twice as many fronds as this. A whole kind of round globe of green on the top. This just has one sticking out at the top. Now, if you see these California fan palms in their native habitat, they look better than this. These aren't growing that well because they're in this cooler coastal climate, and they don't get a lot of green fronds, and as they don't last long and they die quickly. But it still doesn't have as many. It's not as robust as Washingtonia robusta. So this is the California fan palm, and I can't get any closer because this area has been cordoned off for some reason. But there you go. All right, here at the Foothill Open Space Preserve, and I've been wanting to show this to you. It's just another video of Washingtonia robusta. So this is how you would find them if you found them in their wild habitat. None of the fronds cleaned off with the trunk nice and clean and smooth, but the old fronds hanging down, forming this, it's called a skirt that protects the tree and keeps it protected from the sun and the wind, some pests. Pretty cool looking. And if you look at some of the, if you ever go to the palm oases out in the Palm Springs area, those oases are filled with palms that look like this. This is their wild look. Not like you see all these palms along Cabrillo here in Santa Barbara. They don't look like this at all. These fronds could possibly fall off and hurt somebody, so they clean them all off. But they kind of form their own little habitat inside here. Up inside the trunk, where some animals can have a place to live, birds and things, sometimes rats, which people don't like. But yeah, I wanted to show you that. Washingtonia robusta in its wild form. Here at Chase Palm Park, and look at all these beautiful Washingtonia robusta, the Mexican fan palms, cleaned up. These are probably, I don't know, 75, 80 years old. But planted here intentionally to give it a tropical, touristy look, but these trees are not native to California nor Santa Barbara. These were just low-lying sand dunes naturally, but still an iconic tree in Southern California, Washingtonia robusta. Here is a video of two examples of Washingtonia robusta, the Mexican fan palm. So the one in the background behind this deodar cedar is pretty tall, you know, probably about 30 or 40 years old, 50 feet tall. And in this unit there are two palms. There's a California fan palm, the Washingtonia foliifera is not the one you're looking at, but Washingtonia foliifera is the California fan palm. This is Washingtonia robusta, and the difference between the two is, one, Washingtonia robusta here, it has more robust canopy, so a lot more leaves. It looks kind of like a big green ball at the top. You've got some green fronds hanging down, some sticking out, some sticking up, so it makes a sphere of green leaves or fronds at the top. If you were looking at the California fan palm, especially in this area, which is outside of its native habitat, it would not look so good. It would have about half the number of fronds, and there wouldn't be any sticking downward. They'd mostly be sticking out to the sides and up. So it's really not so robust, and it's just not a good pick for this area. The California fan palm, again, not the one you're looking at, that one is native to the desert areas of California, and the most west it comes is like Riverside. So it doesn't come all the way out to the coast here. It doesn't like the coast. There are some in town, and they don't look that good. So that's an older one. Down below here, you see a young one, and these Washingtonia robusta, these Mexican fan palms, pop up everywhere. Birds eat the fruits and drop the seeds, and they're a little bit, you know, weedy. This is a volunteer. I mean, it grew on its own here in my yard. The Mexican fan palm are all the palms all along Cabrillo Boulevard, all along the beach there, all along in LA, lining lots of the streets. Very common landscape plant. This is not native to here. It's native to northwestern Mexico and other areas south of here, but it does well in this habitat, and it looks good along the coast. So you can see this is part of a wild animal kingdom with the giraffe hiding there under the young Mexican fan palm. When I first moved here about a year ago, I put this one on Craigslist because I didn't want this here. I didn't want it in that spot. I said, you can come dig it and have a free Mexican fan palm. Well, no one has ever come, so it still sits here. But one thing I really like about these, they have become, through the industry, kind of an iconic Southern California beach look. So before they were planted all along Cabrillo Boulevard, we just had low-lying sand dunes. It was, you know, it was still a nice beach, but it was kind of nondescript looking. These palms were planted to give it a more wealthy look, because palms have been used in landscaping to denote wealth, but also it gives it kind of a tourist attraction it makes it look like a resort area to have palms lining the beach, supposedly kind of looking like coconut palms that naturally grow on the coast in tropical areas. So I like this one in particular because it catches any little bit of wind. You can hear the leaves or the fronds rustling, and I enjoy that. Even when you don't see any wind anywhere, you can kind of hear them. So that's Washingtonia foliifera, Mexican fan palm. So still looking at Mexican fan palm. Let's get a little closer look. We're actually not looking at my daughter's giraffe, which we put down there just for fun to get it out of the house. It's huge. But I want to show you a couple of the characteristics that we use to distinguish palms from each other. One is the armament, meaning are the petioles, these long stalks that the leaves or fronds are on, are they armed or not? That means do they have thorns? And this Mexican fan palm, it's got gnarly thorns all along it. I mean, when I am cutting these off, pruning this, I always get scraped and cut and poked. You can see them up there. So these are armed, is what you would call. Another thing about it is this is not self-pruning, meaning the petiole stalks or bases are persistent. Once I cut them off, they just stay there, almost looks like a basket interwoven pattern. So only when they get much older, we'll pan back up to this really old one, do those petiole bases finally fall off. But often they're trimmed off by like the city or whoever owns them so they don't fall off in the wind and smash a car or hurt someone, hit their head. So that's a couple of things we look at. Is it self-pruning? Is it a smooth trunk? Sometimes we'll also distinguish palms by are they multi-trunked or single-trunked. This one's clearly single-trunked. Again, it's armed. Another thing too is look at the fronds themselves. They're really cool actually when you look at them closely. This is called palmate. So palmate, a simple leaf, it's all the green flat blade is connected. So it's simple frond, but it's highly pleated. You can see how there's all these folds, and it's palmate, meaning all those pleats are little kind of lobes, all join in the same spot. Very different from some of our other palms that have a more feather look to the frond itself. One other thing I'll point out is this bark isn't too fibrous. Some of the palms have a lot of fibers on the trunk and in between those petiole bases. This one isn't too bad, it's pretty smooth. Another shot of the Mexican fan palm. The reason I'm showing you this one is it's kind of nice, it's short, easy to show it all. But you can see that they have not trimmed off these fronds that are dead, and they naturally will hang down. And if there's enough of them, they hang down in what's called a skirt. And the skirt forms a protective layer for the trunk that guards the tree against some pests, but also against wind burn, sunburn, and temperature if it gets too cold. So almost all the ones around where people live and in landscaping, they trim all these fronds off to give kind of a cleaner look and expose the trunk. But really, as far ecologically, that plant wants to have that skirt there. It forms on purpose, and it helps the plant thrive. Here we have Yucca gloriosa, Spanish bayonet, Spanish dagger. Most of them that you're going to see look like this. These are not planted too often anymore, but they are very common around town. So what you're seeing is an older one, which you will mostly see. Notice the leaves at the top, right up there. They stick straight out. They're rigid, thus the Spanish dagger name. There's another one that looks a lot like this, the cordyline, but the leaves are floppy and long. Big, thick trunk at the bottom as they get older. You see the dead leaves hanging down. I don't see any on this plant itself, but they have big lily-like yucca flowers, meaning they're cream-colored, a bunch of them in inflorescence on the very tips of each of those stems. I can get a picture of them. I will add that on later. But this is Yucca gloriosa. I've seen them a lot lining driveways, like there are quite a few along here, just kind of as a filler. They require almost zero care, and they're kind of interesting. If you keep them cleaned up and pruned right, they can be a really kind of neat looking plant. There you go, Yucca gloriosa.